name is Ryan Dunning, and today I'd like to talk about my Master's of Science in Management and Leadership Capstone, where I went to a local car wash in Cabot, Arkansas, and discussed with them some of the issues that they had with their leadership and management practices that hindered their ability to make profits and keep people long term. In a brief overview, today I'm going to talk about the core competencies of leadership learned throughout the curriculum of this last term, some obstacles that I encountered while dealing with this project and the people that I used to help me throughout, the strengths that both I and the people of the company demonstrated throughout this process, and also the relevance of how this would impact me in my future in my own personal career. The core competencies in which I would like to focus on the most would be the theories of leadership, the organizational structure of this company, operations and quality management, the motivational concepts of human resources, as well as motivation and development and innovation. First off, I'd like to talk about the theories of leadership. The two theories that stuck out to me most throughout this entire process was transactional leadership and transformational leadership, and also the benefits of leadership theories and exercise. So for me in this situation, what I found most interesting is that transactional leadership to me throughout this process is what can a company offer me? Why would I choose to work for that company? Immediate benefits being whether it's high salary, benefits, health benefits, 401ks, things like that. And then the long-term leadership theories, such as transformational leadership, is once you have those initial startup transactions, whether it be wages, XYZ, of how to keep somebody in tuned and involved with one of the growth of your company and that personal and professional growth of themselves as well. And how long-term those benefits can transform from simply paying them more than they received in their last job to that personal satisfaction that they can get over time of working and building your company from the ground up. The organizational structure. In order to solve the organizational structure issues within this car wash would be to create and hire two people in two different positions. One of which would be a total quality manager, and the other being a product development manager. Now we'll get to that a little bit later, but in short, they were losing a lot of money due to lack of quality with the products that they had, and they were also spending a lot of unnecessary money to make repairs and make upgrades to their current systems, whereas if they would invest that money into a position or the people already in positions within this company to work on their systems and their equipment, they would save a lot of money down long term. And additionally, they didn't actually have any products, so they were buying supplies from commercial companies, and then losing profits when they would use those products in their car washes, rather than seeing if they could develop their own soaps, polishes, towels, so on and so forth, and actually sell their own merchandise to other car washes. So that was something that we looked into with myself and the manager, and we decided that those were probably two of the most beneficial positions that could be created if there were any positions created at all. Again, operations and quality management. The operating procedures were a hindrance as far as when the equipment was down, because it was simply just loss of money. If a car wash went down, the car wash shut down for the day, they made no money, and yet they still had to pay their employees to sit and wait because they operated at a normal time, and they had a lot of opportunity loss and just loss of funds in general, because then they would have to bring somebody from an outsider, a third party, to come fix it rather than the employees fixing it themselves. This also looped back to a lack of training and quality management, because again, none of the employees that were currently working there were able to fix the machines when they went down. Motivational concepts of human resources. Now this also ties back into the transformational leadership as well as the transactional leadership. At this time, there are no current initiatives or benefit programs for those that stay long term. I could break down a little bit of the dynamics of how their HR, there is no HR position, but yet their practices, there's There's your typical, lower tier, run-of-the-mill employees. There's a supervisor at each of the 4 locations, and then there's the owner. So really, there's no, once you hit that second tier of employees, such as the supervisory position, you get about $1 more than the minimum wage, but that's it. You've capped out. There's nowhere else to go after that, and that creates a lot of issues as far as retainability long term. And of course, as I mentioned, that there's no actual HR process or program there currently. Motivation and development. Motivation, development, and innovation. There are minimal personal and professional development opportunities at this place. As I mentioned, the best you can do is $1 over the minimum wage, and it usually takes about a year due to the high turnover. The person that I interviewed the most, or interacted with the most, had actually been there for 6 months, became a supervisor, and he's been there for a long time, but he really doesn't have any long-term dreams or aspirations. He still lives with his parents, and he's 22 years old. It works for him. He's definitely not happy, but he also doesn't want to go anywhere else. So he has that retainability because he feels like he has nowhere else to go. However, with somebody that does have options, I don't see them sticking around too long. There are no personal and professional development programs currently, and that could be anything as far as scholarship programs for those that are wanting to go to school, any entrepreneurship opportunities, or mechanical engineering partnerships with other people that help maybe teach them how these things operate, and maybe even turn them around to be their own employees later on down the line, to where this car wash is actually creating their own machines and selling them to other people. As well as there are no positions dedicated to development or innovation, such as employee development, equipment development, product development, or operational innovation. So some of the obstacles that I found when I was encountering this, when I had some of the encounters with this car wash, was identifying the necessary change. So this was one of the most competitive. This is by far one of the best car washes in the entire state of Arkansas. So the owner was making comfortable profits as well already, and so he didn't really feel as if there was a need to continue to invest money elsewhere. And so what we did to overcome those obstacles is I sat down and we did kind of a numbers breakdown of if he were to invest this much in an employee or position or a certain amount of certain type of equipment, he could get anywhere from X to Y range back, just based on his initial investment back into his company. So that was one way. He was a numbers guy, that I'm a numbers guy. That's what we did to kind of knock down those barriers, and then we became much more open with one another afterwards. And also communication. There was no lack of formal business education. He came into a pot of money and started a business, so he didn't actually go to school or do anything formal to actually get his knowledge on how businesses operate. It was more or less he had some family ties, and he had a business partner at one point who was formally educated, but a lot of this stuff was trial and error and years of experience. So one of the strategies to overcome for us both is we took the time to explain the lingo and some of the practices and processes that I may have not understood from him, and how he described how his business operated, and some of the more formal vocabulary words that I had learned in school but may not have applied in practice out in the real world. And also metaphors. We both love just using metaphors as to how things operated, or if I were to find a way to connect with him on a certain word or topic that he was having a hard time understanding, I would use the car wash metaphor, or he also was in cars. So we just, talked about different things that both struck our interest, and you twisted that in a way to where we could understand each other, and the language barrier that we had, with one of us being formally educated, not really educated as far as experience goes, and vice versa. So strengths that both of us demonstrated with this was adaptability. Again, both parties were interested and open to learning about each other and processes, normal lingo, kind of like the scenario that I just shared with you. Once we got past and we were finally on the same page and we were taking our ride along, we were really excited and wanted to know more about what the other person knew or what they brought to the table, which made a great partnership throughout this entire project. And additionally, how that would help me in the long term is being able to apply this in future projects. Working together with people sometimes can be a challenge, especially when they have different learning or communication styles. But this really gave me an opportunity to grow as an individual as well as professional when I sat down with somebody who I didn't know from Adam at the beginning of this project, and we eventually became close business type partners. We weren't business partners, but we had business dealings, I guess you could say, and we worked together really well. I think in a normal situation where we were two partnering businesses, we could get along great, and that's something that's very hard to learn, and it's also hard to teach as well. And again, another strength was the willingness to learn and understand, and I think I've hit that topic several times. In the beginning, there were times where it was kind of frustrating because neither of us were really understanding what the other one was trying to say. But when it occurred, the other person, they stayed calm, but we started asking more questions and more clarifying questions, and neither of us really got that frustrated with one another, even though there were definitely some opportunities in which that could have happened. And I know you can't see it, it kind of cuts out there, but applying this to future project is demonstrating interest in what others have to say, and then keeping them in trying, and to encourage them to keep trying in different ways to explain things without becoming frustrated. So I read that off the slide just so you could see it, because you can't see it. But again, if it's not working, if you're having difficulty communicating with one another, just trying new, slightly different ways to adapt to their learning and communication styles was something really beneficial that I think that long term could help me with my future projects, both in and out of the military, and just in life in general. Finding new ways to communicate with people that may not share the same communication or learning styles is something that everybody could benefit from. So how this relates to my personal career, or my professional career personally in the military, recruitment and retention. Again, transactional leadership to me is how can I keep you around, or from a leadership standpoint, I give you something, you give me something, we both benefit, and that's the reason why you join the team. And what will keep you staying on my team would be that long-term motivation through transformational leadership, or somebody who can stand next to me, or I could stand next to them throughout their growth, their personal and professional growth journey. And again, the personal and professional development for both the employee and the employer. So, for instance, in this case with the car wash, one of the positions that I had mentioned hiring was the product development. So this would be somebody who, is a chemist that finds this, they want to design a new soap for this company. So they then hire somebody who may or may not have professional chemist experience, but really wants to do it. So in exchange for a job while he goes to school, the employer could help, pay their tuition, and then on some sort of agreement that they'll come back and do, fulfill that role as the PDM, the product development manager, at a slightly below fair market wage, or however, and both parties actually will benefit from that, because some of the hardest things you have to do is startup, whether it's starting a business or going to school. Typically your college students are not the richest people in the world, so they have to go get loans. For a lot of people that's really scary, but if you have somebody in your corner who's willing to take that risk on you and grow with you, that's that transformational leadership that I've been talking about this entire time. And again, this also ties into the importance of mutual beneficiaries. So again, if for a student who may not be ultimately thrilled with the idea of taking out loans, but has an employer who's willing to work with them and give them a job, and then once they graduate, then the manager or the whoever's running the show down there can then say, hey, we helped you through school, here's your contract, you're going to be making a little bit less than what you did, but that's part of the mutual benefit for both. So immediately that employee benefits by being able to go to school. Long term, the employer gets to benefit because not only do they have somebody who's now faithful and kind of owes them one, but they'll also have that built-in investment, that personal investment in that company, because they did right by them for so long. And again, throughout this presentation, I talked about the core competencies, obstacles that myself and the business owner encountered throughout this process, some strengths that were demonstrated, as well as the relevance of my own personal career. Thank you.